All right, welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight, breaking down the Broncos loss to the Steelers, 26-21. Benjamin, it's frustrating when you lose, but of course there are things that you have to learn from those games. There's things you have to build on in order to improve. There's something that came out of the game that I thought was something that's worth noting for the Broncos, though they didn't get a lot of pressures, and we talked about that earlier. They were really good on third down, only allowing 16% for the Steelers offense. Also, they only allowed 33% in the red zone, and if they hadn't given up that 59-yard run from James Conner late, they would have held the Steelers under 100 yards rushing. If I had told you a lot of those stats coming out of the game, you would have thought, hey, the defense overall played pretty good.
I thought they did play pretty well. You had some minor breakdowns in opportune times. The Ojemudia long pass, to Chase Claypool, the touchdown where Simmons rolled out and left the middle of the field open, and there were just inopportune things, and then that busted run there at the end, which kind of negated having the 3 timeouts. But that's really what happens. Is you can play really well for a long time, and if you have one play get busted open on you, that changes the perspective of things. So, I thought they did. I thought they played very well in stretches. I think that there are definite positive takeaways in terms of those kinds of things. Now you just need to make that a 60-minute endeavor instead of a 58-minute endeavor, and then all of a sudden you got yourself a winner. So I think there's confidence to take away. The defense has the ability to be great. I think there's confidence in the offense that they can catch you back up, because they came out even with the backup quarterback, even without their best receiver, and did that. So I think there are things to take away here.
Yeah, the offense outscored the Pittsburgh defense, I guess, or the Broncos outscored the Steelers 18-9 in the second half. They shut out the Steelers in the third quarter. And for all the hand-wringing about the Broncos' second half adjustments, at least in this case, I thought of both offense and defensively, they made some pretty good ones.
Yeah, I think so. I think in both games, I think they did. I think they're still trying to find their identity. They're still trying to find certain aspects of themselves, and obviously the injuries make that tougher, because the pieces that you thought you had to be able to count on now all of a sudden aren't there. But this isn't a bad football team. It's not. And the fact that they are able to stay close with 2 good football teams, a combined 7 points is what's separating the Broncos from 2-0 and 0-2 right now. It's important to remember that, against 2 teams that we think are going to be playoff contenders. I think it's really just building on the things that you do well, identifying the things that you don't, and working to try to correct them. And again, it's just like last year. You started off, 0-5. You had no sacks, no turnovers, all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden everything started happening. You went, 7-5 down the stretch. Mm-hmm. This team can turn it around, even with the perilously thin depth. You can turn it around. The question is whether or not this team's going to rise to the challenge or fade away.
Certainly the razor-thin margins they have are still there. And so special teams is something that I'm definitely looking at to improve pretty significantly against Tampa Bay. That they had a tough day. That for all the positives we had to say about special teams and Sam Martin, especially as a punter in the game against the Titans, I felt like there was a bit of a step back against Pittsburgh. But you pointed something out on the radio show, that Heinz Field is notoriously a tough place for special teams.
It really is. Kickers and punters have a tough time there. Even you can see the flags on the goalpost not moving, and meanwhile you have a swirling wind at midfield. It's notorious for that, and everybody knows that. 58-yard attempt from Brandon McManus. I mean, that would have been, it was plenty good via the distance. He just got pushed right because he had a wind that you couldn't see. And so that's one of those things that I think you have to kind of take into account. Now, the missed snap on the punt, that's a little bit different. I think it's just a mishandle by the punter. But, and then all the missed tackling on returns and stuff. You got to shore that aspect of the ball. You can't have, there's 3 components to football. You can't have a wobbly leg, or all of a sudden the whole table's wobbly.
Yeah, and that seemed like the case for the Broncos here. Even with all the things that happened, with the injuries, with special teams, a big lesson learned, I hope that the locker room takes away from this, is that they were still in it. Mm-hmm. That, even with everything that went wrong, you lost your top wide receiver, your top quarterback, a couple of defensive linemen. You were giving up all sorts of missed tackles on special teams. You gave up a safety in the game. Even with all of that, at the 2-minute warning, they were in position to get points. And I hope that Vic Fangio and the coaching staff kind of continue to reemphasize that, hey, guys, these last 2 games, we have had so much stacked against us, and we found a way to battle and stay with it. I think that is something you can continually build on throughout the year.
I think the locker room culture and the locker room message right now needs to be us against the world. Nobody believes in us. Everybody's counting us out. Even though, you got hot take local guys sitting here talking about us being counted out and all this kind of stuff. And, you need to remember that, hey, we can do this. We were so close in those 2 games. We have the ability to be that close. Now, let's close those things out going forward. Don't lose confidence just because you're 0-2. Recognize that you're up to the challenge. Go out there and beat Tom Brady and the Bucs.
But there is something to say, and this is something we covered throughout the course of the offseason. There's something to say about knowing what it looks like to close a game and having the right people in place to help you see that and actualize it. For a young team, sometimes that is a big hurdle.
Sometimes you got to learn how to win, Sometimes you got to learn how to be successful. Sometimes you have to go through it. And sometimes it takes floundering around in those final couple of minutes and not knowing what it is to know what not knowing what it is looks like. Now, you've got 2 games that you can identify. Hey, look, here's what was going on at the end of the game. Here's what we need to do to turn this loss into this win. Now let's go out and do it.